Well, hi everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. February 2nd, we've got 1 month done, 11 more to go. So we're on our second month already, which kind of surprises me a little bit. Bobby reminded me today, he says, you realize that we've got three schools in 5 weeks. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot that we had a pretty decent break between the two-link school and the four-link school, but then the others are just a week apart. So that'll be exciting. Looking forward to the schools. I always enjoy doing them with you, Chad. Have a lot of fun with that and get to talk to a lot of people. And so, we've got our four-link school this weekend, which we still have openings in case somebody's interested in getting on, coming to the school. And we've got our school, I think it's like February 21st and 22nd for the stock car school. And then March 6th and 7th, we'll be out at Joel Smith's place, Close Racing Supply, out there in Eldridge, Pennsylvania. Always enjoy that school. Don't necessarily enjoy getting there and getting home, but I do enjoy the school. It's a great group of people out there, and Joel does an awesome job, and so I'm looking forward to that. And so I'll get to see you quite a bit here in the next few weeks, Chad.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. Yeah, I've actually had a couple weeks off. We were supposed to go to the day motorsports show, ended up getting canceled because of the big snowstorm down there in Texas, and so I didn't go. Didn't get my trip to Texas this year. But Billy was just at Smiley's last weekend, and we hired Travis Sauter to do sales for us, and he was supposed to go to Charlotte today, and that got canceled. So we've been battling this old fashioned winter here this year, and it's kind of threw a little bit of a loop and everything. But we're fighting through it. So yeah, looking forward to this weekend coming down to the school. Should be a good time.
Well, I feel sorry for those poor people in North Carolina. A lot of them people look like, I mean, they had some 10 inches of snow. I seen Nick Hoffman's interview the other night with Kenny Wallace and watched that. And he was talking about the dilemma that they got the forklift stuck at home and they were having a heck of a time. And so I thought that was quite interesting. So, but no, one thing nice about it though, the weather forecast for this weekend looks pretty good. Thursday's supposed to be like 48 degrees, and I think next Tuesday is supposed to be 52. So this will be balmy weather. I mean, it was up to 30 on Sunday, and I should have went and shot some trap or something. It was almost warm enough to be outside.
Yeah.
So what's new and exciting at Weir's Machine?
Hey, this was a good year to make gloves. It's cold.
Awesome.
We got our new Weirds Machine pit gloves. Those are pretty cool. Those are
Yep.
available on the site now. That's new. Got those, and today they released these filter covers. So when you're washing your car, you got a little plastic cover to go over your breathers so that the filter stays clean and doesn't get all
Oh,
wet.
that's
And you don't
pretty
get
cool.
water inside the hose or in the fuel cells. So that's a new product. That's for a small one, and then we got one for the big one also. So those are pretty cool. So yeah, the catalog is outdated as soon as it prints. We have so many new ideas that are coming down the pipeline that's just wild that people can come up with. Just when you think everything cool's been created, you'll have
Sure.
a phone call out of the blue from somebody for something. So it's pretty neat.
Cool. Well, it's nice that you're able to take that and end up producing something that when the racers they enjoy all this neat stuff. I mean, I know that's kind of how I am. I mean, I'm always that cool stuff is cool, and what makes the race working on the race car easier because of course I'm a little older now, so working on them isn't nearly as much fun as what it used to be. So anything that makes the job easier definitely is cool. So, well, the boys got the winter Arizona tour, the 2 weeks down there. Modified wise, Dylan Thornton pretty much crushed those guys down there. He pretty dominated that deal. Ended up winning the points down there with his modified. Looked good. Uh, Brandon Beckendorf and his new Vanderbilt car won the final night, and he had looked good all week down there. So those guys did a good job. And Stock Cars was a good show. Shelby Williams and his new BHE Icon won 2 races down there. And in fact, Friday night, him and Braden Richards finished 1 and 2. So we had new 2026 Icons finishing 1 and 2. So that was pretty exciting. I was excited about that.
Cool.
So yeah, so it was fun. Well, we already have some questions. Alex, hey Bob and Chad, I have an older modified that has a 3/4 inch weight jack for the spring cups. Would you recommend cutting out the 3/4 and putting the 1 inch thread in there in the stub? And if so, what's the best way to do it to keep the spring true with the lower dynamic? Well, the way we kind of do it used to be a little bit on the more dangerous side because we'd actually compress an old spring. We basically took a spring and kind of warmed it up and compressed it so that it wasn't had so much tension on it, and then that's what we would use to line us up. And of course, we use the drop cup in everything that we do. Well, the drop cup definitely once Chad came up with that, that definitely highlighted a lot of these cars that are the springs were in the cars inconsistent. And in fact, we got a video that we used at the school that shows one of those springs binding. And so, what would your suggestion be on how to go about that? Would you think that they should look at going to the 1 inch thread?
I mean, if everything is lined up decent and there's nothing wrong with it, I don't know if I'd go through the hassle of spending the money. It's
I would.
not going to change anything. But if you have, like Bob said, if you have your spring angle like that and your screw jack angle is like that is not ideal. So
No.
when that spring is moving through that motion, you kind of want that screw jack to be lined up with the motion of the spring, so it stays centered on that spring and keeps the spring, traveling correctly through its motion. So, I hate to see you spend money on something that is unnecessary. And if it's lined up and everything travels good, I don't see a problem with sticking with the 3/4. But if it is misaligned, then I would definitely, cut the weld nut out of there and get a 1 inch weld nut and then line it up the best you can. And like Bob said, it's a little bit tough to do that. You have to be careful if you're going to compress that spring and do it. So, but I guess if you want to put the time and effort in it, that would be the gain, is that they're lined up. If they're not lined
Yeah,
up,
that would be the important thing is making sure that they're lined up because that's a big gain. That's a performance advantage that would be well worth taking the time to do. If that's not lined up now, it's a must. It's unbelievable what you'll see like with the load stick when that thing's all bound up and I mean how it just changes rate. It's just inconsistent. Justin, local class has rules similar to IMCA stock cars with a little more power and a 3,200 pound weight. What would you recommend for rear percentage? Um, Lower because the cars are heavier. Um, well, it kind of depends on the horsepower ratio. if it's a lot more power, you're still going to need a certain amount of percentage weight on those two rear tires to make sure that the car's balanced and pushing itself forward. So, in the stock cars, I don't like to see a whole lot of rear percentage because with the motor being so far forward, you have to put the weight so far backward that it can kind of make them a little bit inconsistent. But still, 56% is not going to be unreasonable. I mean, it just seems like that kind of is a whatever you race, that seems to be kind of a number that you look towards. Cole, was Soda Midwest modified on a longer track like Ogilvy? When it gets slick, the car gets a slight push in phase two. Left rear, 125-pound left rear, 225-pound right rear with about 125 pounds of bite and 3/4 of an inch above the pinion on the J bar. What would you do to free it up in phase two and keep forward drive off the corner? Well, what's happening is of course, once it gets dry, the right front's now not, it's not holding its grip, and the left rear is trying to out grip it, probably, um, because you're slowing your lap time is slowing down, so the dynamic force loading that right front tire. Um, what would your suggestions be, Chad?
I would agree. I mean, generally when I hear rolling tight phase two, I kind of automatically think J bar or Panair bar, but he's already an inch above center line. So
Yeah,
that's one thing for sure. When the pace slows down and the track gets slick, you're not going to get the motion. So that'd be where you would either take a little right front spring out or put a chunk of lead up there on the right front to get that car down, turning on the right front when the pace slows down is definitely a real good change. I don't know if you're tight before the fuel, generally it's a rolling tight, so it's a wheelbase thing or a Panair bar thing, or you didn't get enough travel on the right front. So I would look at them three areas.
yeah. I would really lean towards the pace slowed down, and you're not getting the travel and you're not getting the actual load on that right front tire. And of course, once it gets slick, you know, you just can't wing it in there and get that case. So I kind of like the idea of either a little softer spring, but my old age is, I still go by that 15-pound chunk of weight that I saved for my race car, and it depends on what I want the car to do. Sometimes it'll be on the left front corner. Sometimes it might be on the right front corner. Sometimes it'll be on the right rear, depending on what I want the car to do. But that's such an easy adjustment, and that might be all you need. And a 15 pounder up there is not going to affect traction off the corner all that much. It's just going to help keep some static traction in that right front. We got a whole bunch of questions there, man. But okay, Zach.
Yeah.
Hey guys, how much of a difference can I expect chaining the right rear up in a UMP modified? I've messed with left side chains, but right rear is a new territory. Well, Chad's had plenty of experience with that right rear chain.
It's a dangerous territory, is what it is.
Yeah,
So you definitely need to drop out. I would say at least an inch and a half is a pretty good starting point from ride height. So get yourself a measurement sitting there scaled up, ready to rip, and then put the chain on and then jack the car up and let that thing drop out an inch and a half. So that'd be where I would start. And I would do you can use some string and some marker and get some data on how far it's climbing coming off the corner and kind of get yourself where you can tie it down to number. It's really hard to get that data acquisition without a fancy device, but if you take a piece of string, tape it to both cups, and let that hike, and then take a measurement of that, then that'll give you a kind of a range where you need to set that chain on the right rear. And as you tighten that chain up, it's going to keep load in that right rear assembly, which is going to be traction. However, where you run into problems is if you're up on the cushion, hitting the cushion, that chain gets tight, that car steers right no matter what. You can't control it. So a heavy cushion, any kind of character in the racetrack, baby slick track, you're fine. We had a night back in the day when we were first starting this chain thing, and I tightened it up, and my brother's like, "Oh my God, that was a ton of traction." We kept tightening it up, and one night we went out on the feature, and the track was smooth. Somebody bottomed out, started a hole in the right, and going into this turn one, and the hole got bigger and bigger and bigger, and he went in there with that tight chain and absolutely junked the race car because when that chain gets tight in a hole or in a rough track, that thing steers right uncontrollably. So definitely grip in a right rear chain, but man, it's like a knife edge. You got to be careful. You're standing on a razor blade there, asking for trouble. So get yourself a piece of string, get some data going down the straightaway, so you know how far the car hikes, and then you can tighten it up to that point to start. Would be a good point.
Yeah, Craig commented on the fact that definitely don't chain it on a rough racetrack, only a smooth racetrack. Yeah, if there's a hole or a rut or whatever, that thing will be yeah, you'll be puckered up all the time.
You'll never forget that night, just like I don't
Yeah.
forget that night I did.
Oh God, because I mean, you want that thing to turn right. It'll turn right in a heartbeat. Justin said 50, 40 to 50 more horsepower. Well, with the additional 300 pounds of weight, that's probably realistic. I still, well, my starting point would still be that 56% rear percentage. I think that's pretty common on cars. You might be able, with that extra weight, you might be able to get by 55, but on something that's a little smoother and a little slicker, you're, and it depends. If you're on some high bank, high momentum stuff, the 55, 54, 55 would be fine. If you're racing a stop and go type track, then you're kind of risking that factor. It's just going to be slick, and you need as much grip as you can possibly get. Um, Hollmeyer, in your opinion, what is the current best way to most accurately check caster and camber gain? Just the old style bubble gauge, or is there something else better? Now, I'm guessing on the 20-degree turn always makes me feel like I'm getting an inaccurate, non-repeatable number. Well, I will be honest with you that old style bubble gauge, I mean, it's good. It's close. Um, you can't beat that. In my opinion, the best gauge to use is the intercount digital gauge. That thing is sweet, and I've had one for, gosh, I don't know. I bet you that thing's 10 years old by now, and it was a little. I think it cost me at that point in time. I think it was like $400, which was 10 years ago. That was a lot of money, but it's so accurate, and it just does such a nice job, and I don't know. In my opinion, I think the better gauge would be something to look into. What's your thoughts, Chad?
I would agree. You need a good gauge, and then checking it statically at your ride height, and then dynamically through travel is how you check the gains, and that is the most accurate way to do it. It is sometimes hard to get a perfect 20-degree turn. That comes from setting a stop or something like that. There's a way to, if you we should make a thing that turns 20 and then locks is what we should do, but there's plates and things that have that locking. They're relatively expensive, so the best way, that gauge, doesn't that gauge have an angle on it so you can tell?
Yes.
Yes. So go off of that. I mean, you can go camber, you can just put an angle finder on the rotor,
Right.
right? Caster, you can go on a machine spindle, um, or off of like our spindle checker, but you have to have two magnetic angle finders, and it's real hard to get them perfect, because one's going to be going backwards, and then if it's tipped in, it's the gyro's messed up, it doesn't know where it is. So still the best way is that intercom digital gauge, or anybody that makes a digital gauge would be the best way to do it.
Well, like I said, I invest in yourself. Having good equipment to work on your race car makes the job easier. And it will definitely make those nights when it's frustrating working on that race car that make them go a heck of a lot easier when you have the equipment to do it in a pretty smooth way. Um, Zach, what's your opinion on swing arm or Z-Link on an open modified IMCA? Um, well, an open motor, the swing arm and the Z-Link have not been notorious for traction. If the racetrack's got a little bit of grip, they're awesome. I mean, they're as nice to drive as a leaf spring car. The problem is they're a little harder to adjust. Um, and I think Chad can highlight it probably better than I can as far as the Z-Link goes.
Yeah, I honestly don't know why we got away from Z-Links. I mean, the Z-Link right rear and the 4-bar left rear, in my opinion, was still the best race car we ever had. The wheelbase change doesn't happen in the right rear. It has so much traction in the right rear. And then somebody won with a 4-bar, and that's kind of where it ended up. Everybody went 4-bar. We were ZZ, right? Every car
Yeah.
was double Z-Link, and I don't even know who built the first 4-bar left rear, but then we had a jet car at the time, and Johnny's like, "Oh, we got to put a 4-link on the left rear." So he sends us the cage and stuff. This was before I was building. This is before Weir's machine, right? So this was a steel on steel cage, and we did a 4-bar left rear, and we were like, "Man, that thing really turned pretty good." It got the traction and the action on the left rear, and then the next year it was going to be double 4-bar, and we took the Z-Link off the right rear, and my brother's like, "I have no traction." We just kept trying to find traction. We should have put the Z-Link back on, is what we should have done, but there just ain't a lot of guys doing it because there's no cars built like that. You got to have the extra mount on the backside, and I don't know if anybody's even putting the Z-Link mounts on the cars.
Boy, it was very, you don't see it often.
Yeah,
Um,
so it'd be a lot of work. You know, is there a gain? Probably not.
the I think kind of what some people found was the downside of the Z-Link is it was too good to the point where it had the problem in the middle of the corner in phase two of the corner where it was just almost a little too tight. Well, then all of a sudden we went to 4-bar, and now we could put more steer in the car, so the car rotated better. Now, did we have as much drive? No, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything that has more traction than a Z-Link. But the downside to the Z-Link was it wasn't as fast in the middle of the corner. And the swing arm stuff, you're dealing with ratios there, and they're hard to adjust. Um,
You'll spend too much time trying to figure it out.
yeah, I think there's better opportunities or better options out there, I should say. How much rear steer should a stock car have? The track is a quarter mile and stays hooked up all night. I'm fighting the car on the right rear is trying to pass me coming off the corner. Well, I can't actually give you a rear steer measurement because I actually don't have one in my head for the stock car. That's a great question, and that's something that I definitely will investigate. Um, I know we run that right trailing arm relatively flat, and the left trailing arm as much angle as we can legally get by with in the IMCA stuff, which they have a certain amount of rules, but we can still be in that static 20-degree range, um, and that seems to work pretty good. However, these cars are a little heavier, so we've found that having that right rear too flat, it's kind of has that aspect like that Z-Lake. It doesn't have quite enough steer in it to the point where it can kind of bite you a little bit right in the mid corner, And like I said, when I preach in the schools, boy, all your speed, you need to have speed in the middle of the corner. Phase two of the corner is so crucial because the guy that's the fastest in phase two is probably going to win the race. So keep that in mind. Austin, Chad, can you explain how the tire smasher works, the pros of it? Do I consistently need to test the load of my tires throughout it or just when it's new?
It's right there. We were filming today. Got it right next to me. So we'll have our tire smasher videos coming out real soon. We did the instructional video today, and we'll probably do the Facebook social media reel release for tomorrow. And but it is unbelievable, the can of worms that we've opened up with a tire smasher. So basically, we come up, we touch the tire, we take a circumference measurement of that tire as you would measure it stagger wise. Then we smash it to a given load. So my number's been 1,000 pounds. For the most part, the engineers tell me that a tire won't see 40 pounds or 40% of its mass. So if we're running a 2,200 pound race car, smashing 1,000 pounds is probably pretty close to what you need to do. So the machine's capable to go to 2,000. We've seen consistency issues, so you just basically want to smash all the tires at a given number and find match sets. So we've proven it multiple times, where we had a car that was handling, and then the next set of tires goes on, and the car's not handling, and you smash both sets of tires, and you see that, let's just say the right front 80 pounds stiffer. Well, that car is not going to handle the same as it did on that set of tires where it was 80 pounds softer. So it's no different than criticizing a spring. We rate springs, we dyno shocks, we just it took this long to start looking at the tires, and honestly, I wasn't really that interested, and I built it because Brian Geary came to me and wanted to know the difference between they were on American Racers and they went to Hoosiers, and the car was drastically different. So that's what honestly intrigued me the most was that I had no idea there was going to be consistency issues, but and then as you're questioning that second, third, and fourth night also. So every time you run that tire, you're breaking the sidewall down. You're making it softer. It's losing rate. So if you have a tire that, let's just say, is 1,000 pound per inch rate on the right front, on night two that could be 950. And if you just put a half a pound air in it, then essentially on night two it's still 1,000 pound rate. So I think that's a lot of the things that we run into when we run a tire brand new, and then the second night you put a new right front on, and you got an old right rear, and you got to, however you play your tire rotation, you're missing a variable there that is, it's a small variable, but we're all so close that I'm telling you that 15, 20, 30 pound difference in a tire, they're feeling it. And I honestly am blown away. I didn't think it would be uh, as critical as it is, but it turns out to be an advantage, just like smashing a spring, just like dynoing a shock. I mean, if you have a shock and you build it and one it's 20 pounds off from another one, do you redo it or do you just say that's close enough?
I know. You redo it.
I mean that so, I've taken a lot of heat over building this machine. I think just because of the brand awareness, but I mean honestly, we want to win races, and I feel like that we just build cool tools to win races, and Is there an advantage to having equally matched sets of tires? I would say yes. I got a little long-winded there, but there's going to be a lot of videos coming. I know we just started today, and it is amazing what we've learned since the Super Nationals when we debuted it. And everybody that's been getting a machine, I just say I can't wait for 12 months from now to learn what we've all learned from these machines to make our race teams better.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's something that we never give it a thought about the possibility of an inconsistency there. But it's just like the guys that on a go kart. Well, what's the suspension on a go kart? It's the tires. Well, we're running go karts with springs and shocks, but still, the tires what impacts our grip and whether it's side force or whether it's forward bite or whatever the case is, um, that's the last part of the equation. Philip says he will see us at the stock car class. All right, that's good. Yeah, stock car class is filling up. There's not a lot of. I, we can. I think we can do 65, and I'm pretty sure we're at 55, 56 is what I thought I remember seeing over the weekend when I looked it up. So the stock car deal's filling up pretty good. Ryan, hypothetically speaking, how would a car react if you narrowed the front track width up 3 inches, bringing both right front and left front in 1.5 inches equally? Well, it would be kind of like once you get the closer you get those tires together, the faster they will react. However, the problem is they might react so fast that they unload the rear tires and make it to the point where you're almost kind of like riding a tricycle in a sense. Um, what's your opinion on that one, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, moving the right front in 1.5 inches is going to make that thing turn like on a dime, and you're definitely not going to want that. Moving the left front end, anytime you get the front end so small and the rear dominates, you're not going to have any control. I don't think. You
Right.
want to turn, and it's going to be darty, and it's not going to be good. I don't think that's the right direction.
Yeah, you're going to take all the stability out of the
Yeah,
car.
yeah, for sure.
The front end is what creates the stability, and the rear end is what drives the front end forward. Um, Renee and Kenny, what do you recommend for springs for a 16-year-old that is just starting out on an IMCA quarter-mile bank racetrack? Well, first, I need to have you answer the fact, what are you actually running? Are you running a stock car? Are you running a sport mod, modified? Before I could answer that, we need
It's
to know
IMCA stock car, two down. IMCA stock car.
IMCA stock car. Um, I would lean towards a little stiffer right front. Myself, if it was my kid, I'd put an 1,100-pound spring in the left front and a 900-pound spring in the right front. 125, probably 125, 150 in the left rear, probably a 250 in the right rear. And then what I would do is allow him to get used to how that car drives. Don't necessarily change springs right away. Let him learn how it drives. Now, depending on how he drives the car, there's a good chance you're probably going to want to soften that right front up. Um, some drivers, I mean, we've got guys in our new BHE icons we got one guy's running a 900-pound right front and one guy that's running a 650-pound right front. So A lot of that right front spring really depends on the driver and the setup that you use. But that would be a good baseline, quarter-mile baseline. That's going to make a nice, stable race car for him to learn what he's going to need to learn. Um, Eric says, we are USRA and thank you. Oh, Ty wrote us a page. On a sport mod, when you lower the right bar in the slick, it will add a touch of static trail. Do you leave the typical or do you take a turn out of the bar to take the trail out? I don't know. I don't change the length of the right bar much. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea to take the trail out of it. I mean, that would make sense in my situation or in your situation. I think it would make sense. Taking the turn out of it would make a lot of sense. Also, on lowering the Panhard bar and the roll center for slick, what range of angle would you put into the Panhard bar? 16 to 25 degrees. Uh, I'm not a real huge angle guy for that Panhard bar. I think you can put so much angle in that thing that all of a sudden it's put so much load on that right rear tire that the car becomes unbalanced. And then what happens is you'll see, like, say for example, if you were lucky and you got to run, you guys I think normally run 18 laps or whatever. We'll just say 20 because it's easy math. You run 20 laps, and if you get to run 15 of them consecutively without a restart, that right rear tire, with it being slick, is going to get warmer and it's going to gain circumference. It's also going to get harder because once it gets too hot, it's going to start fading. So I would rather do other adjustments, like your trailing arm bar, like you said, moving some weight, that kind of thing, rather than doing a lot of panel bars. So that's 16 degrees. I wouldn't be over 20 degrees. Third, if you're a little tight on entry in the slick, would it be better to lighten the right front spring or the left front spring, and why? If you're a little tight getting in, more than likely it's a right rear issue. So that being said, I would probably, if you felt that it was a little tight getting in, I'd probably decrease the spring rate on the left front because I think it'll take some side bite out of the car. One thing about changing the left front is it's corner entry only. When you change the right front, that changes the whole corner, phase one, phase two, and phase three. So I lean towards the left front. Um, I tend to lighten the left front, but believe I may not be letting the right front get into the racetrack with the adjustments and end up with it being pushy. It's possible, but I doubt it. I think it's a right rear. Your tightness is your pushiness is a side bite right rear issue, in my opinion. That's normally that's the case. Good questions. That was a very good question, Ty. Jamie, well, how's it going tonight, Jamie? Guys, what's your thoughts on the theory that a quick change robs power versus a 9-inch?
Well, it's
Well,
not a theory.
I don't think it's a theory. I think it's fact.
Still a fact, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a fact that there's, I mean, and you just think you got more gears in there, and so it's going to take a little bit more horsepower to turn more gears. Now, you know, depending on how much horsepower, I don't know. I think a lot of people said it was like five horsepower or something like that, or I don't know what
The
number it
number,
is.
I think the number used to be 10%, but the quick changes have gotten a lot better. And, they make trick gears and trick bearings, and I think they've evolved. So I don't think it's as big of a gap as it used to be.
Yeah, if I was running a quick change, I definitely would have polished bearings in the quick change. I would have the polished gears, the best possible quick change gears I could get that had the least amount of friction. And like Chad said, they've improved that system, so it's not probably as much as it was at one point in time, but definitely. And once again, if everybody's on a quick change, you all got the same problem. Um, Dale says Ryan tweeted that's cheating.
Never thought of
Well,
tread width rule. I never thought of that.
true. Joe, I noticed a certain class of cars that they get to bounce through the corners. Would your tire load machine help this bounce action?
No, generally the bounce is caused by something else, chains and angles and all that kind of stuff. And what was your one thing about bouncing again? Was that a what were we doing there?
Right rear chain.
Right rear chain.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
if your car's hopping coming up off the corner, you got the right rear chain too tight.
yeah.
And you'll see, I mean, it's not, and the hopping that you'll see is not necessarily jumping off the ground. It's the tires compressing, where you can see the sidewall of the tires it's just kind of bouncing. And then if you listen to the motor, you'll hear that. So, um, Dale said that's alleged, or Ryan said that's allegedly. Anyway, David, do you think the spec motor in IMCA will be a better option this season? Well, I kind of think Tim Ward proved that last year at the Super Nationals. Uh, he put that spec motor in, and I know that's what Beckendorf was running their new version of their spec motor down there in Arizona. Uh, I I think you're going to see the spec motor be a lot more of a factor this year than last year, in my opinion. I think it's just the same old deal. The engine builders get the opportunity to work on it and tweak it and tune it and tweak it and tune it and tweak it and tune it. It's got to get better. Um, Zach, what's your preferred ball joint height on an IMCA modified? Well, it all depends on what your spindle is and where your A-frames are mounted. I mean, you know, there's a tremendous amount of variables, but I can say, as a rule of thumb, um, with the metric spindle, we I always like a standard right front, upper and lower, and then the left front is a plus half, and the lower is a standard. Now, that's old school stuff. I mean, a lot of guys are playing with that right front ball joint, finding that there's a lot to be gained by moving the roll center, left to right. and some things like that. So, you know, I don't know what the actual answer would be as of today, but that's a place I would start. Um, you just talked about stock car guys right front spring 1 650 and 1 900. Would they have different shocks on the right front with that big of a difference? Well, I kind of have a little bit of an idea of those guys, the shock package that they have, and I don't think there would be much difference. Um, definitely, I would say the 651 would probably want a little more compression. The 900 one probably is going to want a little more rebound, a little more what we call 0 point to get it once it gets compressed, get it there and then hold it there a little longer. So I think there would be a lot of tuning that you could do with those two different shock packages to make the combination work for you, or two different spring packages. The soft left or the soft right front, you wouldn't need a whole lot of 0 point in it, because it's gonna stay there. Zach, back to my previous question and Z-Link and Swing Arm. You said there were some better options out there, and some of those options is your opinion. Well, the four link thing. Number one, it's pretty simple. I mean, it looks difficult, but it really isn't near as difficult as what one would think it would be. Especially the right rear stuff. I don't see a lot of magic stuff going on the right rear. I mean, there's some different length arms to change how how the steer is and how it indexes into the spring and things like that. But keep in mind with the four link, you're always when the car rotates or falls over to the right side, it's going to create spring stiffness. So the spring is always kind of working to your favor. Where like the Z Link, a lot of times you have no bars holding the car up. It's all on spring. So, it's just a different concept. But the four link just seems to be a little more tunable, I think, for steer purposes. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, don't get too wrapped up in other options.
Yeah, yeah. Basically you have a four-link rear suspension with a 17-inch upper bar and a 15-inch lower bar is a good place to start, or 16 and 14, whatever the case might be. Jamie, I'm in a USRA stock car and it's pretty good mix of guys running 9-inch, but the guys that are running those are usually running an IMCA legal engine. Do it probably equals out. Yeah, it's very possible. I'm not super knowledgeable on the engines. I've just always told engine guys that their job is to make my race cars look really, really good.
Well, IMCA can't run a quick change, right?
Not in a sport mod or a mod. I mean, not in a stock car.
Yeah, so the IMCA legal guys are running a 9-inch so they can go back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Dustin, my two favorite guys in the shop. Can't wait to put it all on test. It's crazy when you get your head wrapped around this stuff, how simple it gets to understand. Um, I mean, there's been so many overly intelligent people that have tried to make our industry as difficult as possible. And, and once you understand how the stuff works, it's really not that difficult. And we don't see people making boo changes. I mean, they're usually changing one bar here or there. I mean, it's not. It really isn't as. It isn't as difficult as what we can make it be at times. And those guys that change 16 different things between the heat and the feature, I just scratch my head. And I'm not saying that they don't know what they're doing because I've seen it happen and they've been pretty fast. But I'd be scared to death because, boy, that would be, uh, my son and I go round and round on some of the changes that he wants to do because he wants to do about 5 changes. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know. 2 changes, and I start to get nervous. Jeremiah, what is your thoughts on the CT25 engine package? Our track allows it with sport mods with it tuned down, but overall seems to be catching on the big here in the East Coast. I really know nothing about that motor.
Who's in charge of tuning them down? Go up.
I don't I don't know.
I mean,
I
if he's your buddy, you're set.
yeah. I don't know. Hmm.
They race a lot of that CT 525 in asphalt, or it's an option. I mean, I think it's a good piece. I think you can run it in USMTS. I don't know. I don't know much about them, but anything that can be tuned with a computer is somewhat sus in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know nothing about it. Sorry, Jeremiah, I can't help you on that. I'm definitely not an engine guy. Like I said, the engine guys, I'd call Kevin Stoa. He would be a good guy to explain some of that stuff to you. And he's definitely not that he probably needs to take an extra phone call, but he would be more than happy to help you understand it. I'm sure he would. Sam, what's the advantage of a 650 right front spring in a USRA stock car? Well, it gets over on the right front a lot easier, and it definitely turns. It's going to want to turn down in easier. Now, I would think that it might struggle a little bit with traction up off the corner, but it definitely will turn down into the corner better and get over on the right front better. It wouldn't probably be my first choice, but I'm not saying that there's guys that are out there that are making it work, so who am I to say? Um, Jeremiah says John Blackshear. Okay, that'd be a good one. Drew, taller versus shorter ball joint on the right front of a Cruise's street stock. What's the difference would each how the car would drive? Well, anytime you change that upper ball joint, you're moving the roll center, you're changing the roll center either up or down, and you're definitely changing the roll center left to right. So once you do that, if the roll center goes further to the left, it's going to want to get on the right front a little bit more with less spring. Am I saying that right, Chad?
Correct. Yeah.
It's going to want to get on the right front a little bit easier with less spring, so you can get by with running a softer spring and get the car in, get it over on the right front better. Moving it to the left, some people say it's got more traction. Yeah, I can't say that I've proved that one way or the other, but in theory, I think it would work. The 650, yes, definitely. Dustin said the 650 will wear out quick. $650 on a 2,700-pound car. I'd probably change that every 5 nights. And I don't care whose spring you have. Jeremiah, they checked it after every stage of the race, qualifying, heats, and features.
Yeah, I mean, if the tech man's keeping an eye on it, then I think you're good to go.
Yeah, interesting. Well, once again, we've got our four-link school coming up this weekend. Chad will be coming down, and it'll be Chad and Bobby and I and Jake McBurney. He will be our driver for the four-link school, and looking forward to it. It sounds like we're going to have a pretty good class. It's not going to be a real big class. I mean, it's a small. It's the four-link class is always our smaller class, which is a good thing. So something if anybody's interested in the four-link school. Stock car school is coming up third week in January or third week in February. I think there's still 5 or 6 seats left in that school. Dustin, I would go less. I wouldn't go less than an 800-pound spring, really a 900-pound spring. Well, I kind of would tend to agree with you, Dustin. I know the guys that work for me, that's kind of where they've been at, is that 800-900 range. And keep in mind, we got a 2,700-pound car here, or 2,900-pound car. What are the stars? Are they 29? Well, I sound stupid here, but I'm not sure. I think it's a 2,900-pound car.
Heavy.
Yeah, I think that's right, 2,900-pound car. So I agree with you, Dustin. The next show is going to be the 16th of February. And I don't know if any of you out there have any recommendations on. Jamie says 2,800 in USRA, so yeah, that'd be IMC would be 2,900-pound car. Anyway, anybody got any suggestions on who they'd like to see us have as a special guest? It's about time to bring somebody on here as a special guest. A lot of times we have internet issues when we get a third person on here. So that's kind of why we haven't had a guest here lately, but definitely we should definitely put something together here soon. Of course, it's getting racers wise. I mean, the guys just got back from Arizona and they'll be leaving in a week or so to go to Kenny Wallace, and I talked to Kenny Wallace a while back, and he was just saying that he was just too busy, but I might still just rattle his cage again. When he gets back from Florida, he'll be down there another week, and
He just won. He just won tonight.
Yeah, he just won tonight. So yeah, he would definitely be. Yep, he got her done tonight. That's no doubt. Definitely, Kenny does a good job. He's a great driver. Got a good race car. Yeah, definitely one of Hoffman's. Well, actually, Hoffman's personal car is what he's actually racing. How about one of the 615 Smith boys? Well, it's definitely something to think about. Well, guys, we're at the end of our hour, and we got one more question, and we'll take this one, and then we'll be done. Is there an advantage to a spring? Anyway, is there an advantage to a spring pull bar versus a biscuit bar? Not my experience on either US or modified. Well, It kind of depends on where you're racing. You know, if you're racing the UMP stuff, the spring bar is definitely kind of an advantage. The biscuit bar seems to be the kind of the thing for IMCA right now. UMP, I think those guys are still pretty much, a lot of those guys are running a spring bar. Chad would know more about what but it seems like the IMCA stuff is pretty much a biscuit bar anymore.
Yeah, the if you're a USA car, I would probably either recommend our Big Biscuit or a spring bar. The springs decel into the corner harder, so you'll need a little more dampening force. So your 9010's got to be a little bit stiffer than it is with a puck bar. The puck bar, they take a little bit more time to get back to their install height, so their rebound rate is less than a spring, so you can drive in the corner harder and not shear traction. Biggest difference is a feel on decel.
All right, Donnie, I say get up on the wheel and race your car. I see guys get spun out and start the back, come back up and win with a. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Well, thanks, guys. Great questions tonight. A lot of good input, and we look forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chad.
Yep.